Hello, thank you for joining me for another Weatherquest farming forecast. We're going to look ahead to the next 3 or 4 weeks to see how the prospects are looking for the remaining part of the harvest period, but also we're going to spend a moment or two looking at why the weather has been so windy recently and also how unusual that possibly has been. So let's start as usual by having a quick look around the world at various conditions elsewhere. Western USA, generally dry weather, has favoured the winter wheat harvesting, but it has reduced the soil moisture content, whereas in the eastern USA there's been a scattering of showers around, the odd one heavy, but generally speaking not heavy enough to reduce the water stress on those late planted but poorly rooted corn and soybean crops. Looking into Northern Europe, well, here we know about our weather. It's been very unsettled, very wet weather at times. It's caused problems both for harvesting but also for water management in northern Britain, and that feature extends right into the northern half of Europe towards the Baltic. As we look at southeastern Europe and western Russia, there it's a slightly different story. It's in fact cool, showery conditions, and they've given by and large excellent summer crop prospects. So let's see what's the reason for this very unsettled weather. Well, one of the main reasons is where the jet stream is. It's the driver of everything, and it's certainly the driver on this occasion because you can see the strong jet stream current well south. It's almost south of the British Isles, which is not a typical position for high summer, but it's blowing right across the UK, and various troughs and ridges in the pattern bring slightly better weather and much worse weather from time to time. Very changeable, and you can see as the sequence runs over the next few days, we've got the sharp trough which is steering the low pressure area up across the country, and the main strength of the jet stream here moves away, but we get another one coming in from the west as we go into the early part of next week, and it just keeps that unsettled pattern going, and it does mean that it's going to be very difficult to plan for any prolonged dry spells of weather. So looking at the main feature, it is this low, and it's not just rain that we're interested in, it is in fact also the strength of the wind, as I mentioned at the beginning, and the wind strength is shown very well by these isobars. They're the lines of pressure blowing around the low, and the winds blow around the low in an anti-clockwise direction, and the closer these lines are together, then the stronger the winds. And you can clearly see that the strongest winds are to the south of the centre, and you're going to find unusually strong winds blowing across southern Britain during the latter part of tonight and through Saturday and into Sunday. Now it's a holiday time, it's high summer season, we've got people towing caravans, we've got folk at festivals, folk camping, we've got harvest, we've got all sorts of things going on outside. You normally cope with the occasional heavy burst of rain in the summer. What we don't normally have to deal with is very strong winds, and it will make some problems for us, both with standing water and spray on the roads, but also difficult driving conditions on the main motorways if you're towing caravans and such like. So where's the low go? It drifts slowly to the northeast, and the strong winds remain with us through to the end of Saturday in the south of the country. In the north there is a subtle change going on. We're starting to see the wind direction become northerly. Now that's obviously a much cooler direction than these very warm southwesterly winds, and on the dividing line there is what will be a front which will carry this band of showery weather along. As the low itself is a long way away, it's this band of showers that's going to affect us as it swings southeastwards. So during Sunday our wind swings around, it becomes much lighter, but there are going to be various showers scattered around in here and other troughs and bands of showery rain. All in all, it's not high summer weather, and it's not easy harvesting weather either. Now behind me there is another area of low pressure. These often form around the periphery of the old lows, and this one's going to run towards the southwestern corner of the country. And as it comes in, it'll bring some heavier periods of rain, some more prolonged rain, rather than just the showery weather we were talking about before. And it doesn't just end with that one, there are others. So we're going to see as that little low drifts away, we find another one turns up. It forms in here and comes towards the extreme southwest of Britain, and that could also bring a period of rain to southern parts of England, particularly in South Wales. So we're not done with unsettled weather even as we go in towards the middle part of next week by the end of Tuesday. So just seeing how unlikely it is to get strong winds at this time of the year. It's quite interesting. This chart has been prepared which shows this 40 mile per hour line. You can see here we've got many occasions, this is each year, coming along from 1981 here right the way up to 2018 at the end there, how many years we find a wind gust above 40 miles an hour in August. Now you might think August is not the sort of month we do strong winds, but you can see from this, every single year bar about 5 in this period has winds above 40 miles an hour. And the big subtlety is that it often is the last week in August, right at the end of the summer months, when you get this trend towards unsettled weather. But there are some spectacularly large numbers, and I suspect many of these will have been at that tail end of August. But you can see it's not that unusual. And if we look at the count, in the 30 years from 1981 to 2010, we've had 25 occasions where the wind has gusted to 40 miles an hour in East Anglia, so the eastern side of the country, not particularly exposed to most of those wind directions that come with these storms. 50 miles an hour we've found 12 in 30 years, and 60 miles an hour there's been 2. So it really isn't an unknown thing, but it's not that common to get these big wind speeds up this end of the scale. So it is something that happens. If it does happen, it's unusual, and it's something to be wary of. Another way of looking at it is to look at the number of days in August when you get this windy weather. And you can see here the same span of years from 1981 through to 2018. There have been many years when you get at least 40 mile an hour wind speeds, and quite a few when you get gusts above 50 miles an hour. At this time of the year, often one of the causes for this is what happens to old hurricanes from the other side of the Atlantic over the Caribbean and up the eastern side of the States. Those decay into areas of very warm, moist, humid air, which feeds energy into our normal mid-latitude areas of low pressure, the lows that you see on our weather maps on the television. Now, I remember this one because this was what happened to the end of Hurricane Charlie over in the Caribbean and moving up the east coast of the States. That eventually came across the Atlantic and produced a very wet and windy spell of weather. It was not a hurricane by then, but it did produce that for August bank holiday, and it was called in the newspapers Tail End Charlie. But it produced some very severe weather and sadly some fatalities as well. So you do have to treat some of these lows seriously. So strong winds do happen. They're not rare in the sense that most years you have at least 40 miles an hour. The extreme strengths that cause significant damage are rare, thankfully. But we've got to keep a watch on the charts, because when the jet stream is as strong as this one, these things can develop very quickly. Okay, let's have a look at the ensemble forecast. We've spoken about these before. 50 runs or so of the same model can be used to look at the spread of values, the uncertainty in a forecast. And here it's how much water we gain or lose during the next 10 days or so. This is in Bath. It seems very odd talking about gaining water in the bath, but this is what happens during this 10-day period. You're going to be running at about 15 to 20 millimetres of rain at the end of the 10 days. Some runs of the model, just a few, keep the weather pretty much stable, so the amount of rain we get is offset by the evaporation rates, which at this time of the year 2.5–3 millimetres per day. But some of the runs do produce much more rain, and they will give us a total that may be 40, perhaps even 50 millimetres above where we're starting from. So let's have a look at somewhere much wetter, Manchester in northwest England. And here you can see there's a very definite trend. The red line is the average value, and you can see it runs through and puts them 60 to 70 millimetres of rain wetter at the end of the 10-day period. And there is quite a bit of spread in the values here, and you can see some of them well over 100 millimetres of rain in excess, and others down at about 20 or 30. Now that could be due to that very fine detail of the track of these small lows that I showed you on the earlier charts. It could also be due to how the showers are distributed, and some of those will affect one place and not another place. So there is a lot of variability in this, but it does look like Manchester is a particularly wet corner in this sequence of 10 days. You come down to a traditionally dry part of the country, and at Norwich you can see we're very much keeping on par with the evaporation rates. There are one or two events here, like for example Monday into Tuesday, where you get this single event where the model seems to think there could be a very wet period of weather there that just tips it up. But in general, something about 10 millimetres wetter than we are now. So let's see what we can say about the sea level pressure. This is again using these ensembles, so that's comparing different charts from different runs of the same model, and you can see there's a sequence of troughs and ridges. Now what this is the big low coming this weekend. Then the pressure builds, and all the models all the runs seem to be fairly happy about this. And then it starts to spread out, a bit of variability, and the pressure dips again. So it looks like we've got another small low coming through probably next Thursday. And then what happens is there's a rise in pressure. As lows go past, you often get troughs, then a ridge, then a trough. And this one is a deeper low again. And it comes down not quite to the one that we're having this weekend, but nearly. But some runs of the model do take it even lower. So there are some that take it way down. So this is unsettled, potentially very excitable weather that we're running into in that third week in August, where you can get these deep lows developing very quickly, and the model's still a bit uncertain which way that balance is going to go. In either event, it looks as though the average line through here suggests some return of low pressure in about the Monday or the Tuesday of the following week. So here's a nice picture, typical of what many of you are doing. It's from Tornado Titan down at Great Leys in Essex. So thank you for that. And it just suggests really to me that one of the main features while you're trying to harvest is how variable showery weather can be. You can have one field on the farm affected by a heavy downpour and a nearby field is not, or it could be, if you're a contract farmer, you can move your plant and machinery to a dry part of the country. You can use many of those radar displays. WQRadar is a good example, and see how much rain is fallen in a given area. Or you can talk to our forecasters, and they're available every day 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. on 09065 777675. Calls are £1.55 per minute plus network charges, and they'll be able to give you all the heads up on the different systems and where the next periods of wetter weather are coming from. Okay, at the moment, looking at week one, so this is from Thursday of this week through to Wednesday of next week, the mean position of the jet stream. Here you can see the strong winds aloft, what drives the weather machine, and it's producing this very unsettled weather. And it's produced lower than average pressure over Britain and to the north of us, which is what you're seeing on the weather charts at the moment. And as a result of that, as we look at what that does to rainfall, you can see very much wetter than average rainfall over the British Isles, extending with that jet stream into Scandinavia and northern parts of Europe. Southern parts of Europe and southeastern Europe, they've stayed drier, but even the western side of France and western side of Spain and Portugal also turning out to be wetter than average as well. As we go into week two, the jet stream's still there, so this is still well south for us, so it suggests very unsettled weather still. The low pressure, though, has migrated a bit to the northeast of us. Now that's significant because it implies our winds are going to be coming down from the northwest, so slightly cooler conditions, so the temperatures are going to drop, and the rainfall amounts are all going to move east with that jet stream. And you can see over the British Isles, slightly drier than average conditions now, with a cooler northwesterly, not such heavy rain around, but the temperatures, as I said, with a northwesterly and a flow like that, the summer temperatures will be gone. So as we move into the third week, the low pressure now redefines itself just to the west of Britain, and the implication of that is winds coming up from the southwest, so we see temperatures recovering, the rainfall mostly for that western side nearer the low, but it does look as if we stay with the drier weather in the southeastern corner of the UK. And temperature-wise, pretty much returning to average. So remember, we were very cold the week before. We're now becoming nearer to average for those temperatures. And then as we go into week four, well, the one thing that comes out of it is that the rainfall pattern doesn't show any really strong features to it. So near average rainfall. And it does look to me as if we're in for one of those periods of weather where overall, wet and unsettled at first, so strong winds and frequent showers over this weekend. It does look like there could be further spells of rain and showers in the coming week and into the week after when it turns cooler. So the second half of next week, and particularly over next weekend, starting to feel a bit cooler as temperatures drop. And then just the hint, and it is only a hint at the moment, of slightly more settled conditions returning by the end of August. So there we are, that's your farming forecast for the week ahead and for the next 4 weeks for the rest of August. If you want to get in touch with us, please do so. info@weatherquest.co.uk. Follow us on Twitter, #WQFarmingForecast, or subscribe to our YouTube channel and catch up with the forecast then. Thank you very much for watching and have a good month.